Hi everyone, Tyler Dubois here, and I'm outside the Starbucks doing my review for the New York Times bestseller 175-page New 52 Red Hood and the Outlaws Volume 3. Written by Scott Lobel, Fabian Nicieza, I really don't know how to say his last name, and with art by Timothy Green, the second. Okay, now, a little backstory before I get into it. For the characters, Red Hood and the Outlaws is basically from a team called the Outlaws, which is formed up by Red Hood, Jason Todd, the second Robin. Most famously known for his death by the Joker and some sudden revival, which drove him insane and kind of turned him into a revengeful Batman-type character, Nightwing-type character, that essentially kills people, unlike Batman. So, when he puts someone down, he puts them 6 feet under. The second character is Starfire, which everyone, or Kori, she's commonly known by people, which you should all know, hopefully from Teen Titans, the show, the comics, or anything. But if you don't, essentially Space Princess, orange skin, flaming hair, green energy thingies. Rounding off the list is Red Arrow, Roy Harper. Also technically a founding Titan member, although this is New 52, so it's a new genre in this. But before I get into his backstory, he's essentially Robin to Green Arrow, so Red Arrow, Speedy, Arsenal. He's had a bunch of names. Anyway, he's essentially an ex-drug addict who then got kicked out by Green Arrow, and is now basically the tech guy for the team as well as their archer. It's weird. He does like he's kind of like Gear from Static Shock. He makes like inventions and stuff, and it's cool. Now we're going on to the actual plot of the story. The story itself is the Volume 3, Death of the Family, which is a Bat Family-wide story arc in which essentially the Joker has disappeared for a year, and he comes back, and he basically tries to off basically all the members of the Bat Family besides Batman, because he believes it mucks it up and kind of takes away from the purity that is Batman. It's weird Joker mania. Now, the character we're going to mostly be focusing on is Jason Todd, because in the story, this is essentially his story. He's the one with an actual character arc, he's the one that grows as an actual character, and it's basically mostly from his perspective. Kori and Roy are there, but they're not really, main character. They're not really like the focus of this. This is a Red Hood's story. Now, the story arc opens up basically from the beginning of the Act 1, which obviously starts on the first page, which essentially has the Joker revealing himself and kidnapping Red, and basically poisoning his girlfriend, and then Red Arrow has to go and find him, and then he gets kidnapped by Joker. Red Hood gets kidnapped by Joker. And then the actual act then begins in the thing, which is essentially the Joker is claiming, which no one, it's never really stated whether or not this is 100% true or not, that the Joker technically created Jason Todd, essentially put him on the path to become Robin, so that then Joker could have a Robin that he could then murder and kill. Now, this kind of creates the character arc for Jason, because now he has this internal conflict of his own personal worth and stuff like that, and of course in a very Jason Todd-like way, he essentially tells Joker to go screw himself. Also, this is also kind of the beginning of the end of Jason finally accepting himself for who he is, but I'll get more to that later. So then, Act 1 basically ends with the Joker kind of telling him all this stuff and basically getting Jason on the path about page 97. Pages might be a little screwed, I'm doing it all electronically. Well, it's at point 97, so I'm assuming that's a page, so page 97, Joker. And now then, Act 2 is basically... Act 2 really doesn't do a lot for the character arc of Jason, because it's mostly the climax of the Batman story. The Batman version of the story, which is essentially Batman versus Joker. Joker falls in ambiguity, stuff like that, which is good. It's fun. It's in every version of Death in the Family, the Nightwing version, the Red Hood version, the Red Robin version, and of course, the Batman version. But it doesn't really do a lot for Jason Todd's story, and don't get me wrong, this is definitely a Jason Todd story. Now that Act 2 ends about page 137, about the end of the climax for the Batman story, because as I said, because Jason Todd's story continues on after the climax of the Batman story, where Jason Actually, let's take a moment here and look at some of the imagery. See, here you get to see all the characters. There's Jason Todd in a very kind of weird Joker-like grin, and then you can see Red Hood and Corey on the reflection on it, which is very nice. You can see the two characters. I'll get some concept art to see what I'm talking about. See, here's a better image. I want you to see them kind of in their cool little action poses. You get Red Hood, which you can obviously tell because of, you know, the red hood, or helmet, kind of. Corey, the only girl. Purple leotard thingy. And Red Arrow, Arsenal, Speedy, so many names. Which, one thing I would like to mention, almost dropped my thing there. Give me that extra credit, eh? In this comic series, Roy Harper and Starfire are currently in a relationship thing. Although she was also with Jason Todd in the beginning, which isn't really that much referenced, kind of. They kind of just left him, then went on Red Arrows, you know. Anyway. Basically, Act 3 begins, as I said, on page 137, and essentially has the Joker having one last laugh on Jason Todd, which is essentially, he puts on the mask, Red Hood puts on his Red Hood, and like this, and a hologram Joker comes out, and pulls one last laugh, in which basically poisons him. Because he's still kind of pissed off about Jason Todd coming back, because, as I said, Joker believes that he created Jason Todd as Robin, and basically created Jason Todd's life story thing. And he said that he basically screwed with his, I think the Joker uses the word like his play by coming back where he wasn't supposed to. So he basically ups and poisons him. And then Batman comes to his rescue, pulls the mask off. And now the third act kind of really goes into a battle of Jason's psyche, in which you get to see through a not hallucination, but through a mental aspect, the huge effect Joker has on his mind. Because this isn't the actual Joker, this is the Joker inside of Jason Todd's mind, and the huge effect that that the horrible actions that have been put against him have affected him. As I said, this is the character arc of the character. This is the plot of the character, and moving on. So, as the story goes on, he finally learns to to move on from Joker, and kind of move on from the horribleness of his life that happened beforehand, because he has a weird spirit guide named Dagna. Dagna? I don't know how to say her name. There's a lot of weird name people in the New 52. Who was kind of like his spiritual teacher, sensei thingy. And she basically tells him in his mind that if he doesn't let go of his anger, that his new life and his new friends, i.e. Corey and Starfire, are going to basically become the Crossfires. They're not actually being hanged in this. This is, again, a mental projection inside of his mind. So then, essentially, he then has both a mental and a kind of physical suggestion that Batman kind of pull him out of his horror, and then he finally does what he hasn't done beforehand, which is forgive Batman for letting him die, and then kind of moving on with his life with the Outlaws. And then, after his forgiveness, him and Bruce Wayne at the end, at the very last page, have a really good father-son moment. Because if you forgive her, which is weird and kind of a fun thing I've noticed, that out of all the people besides Damian, Jason Todd probably treats Bruce Wayne more of a father than any of them. Because as it's said repeatedly in the comics and also on the wiki, Nightwing does not see Bruce Wayne as a surrogate father, and Tim had both his parents. So Jason's really kind of the one who kind of sees Bruce as another parent. So it's very the prodigal son returning moment, and that's where the act ends, with Jason kind of finally moving on with his life from the entirety of the horrors that kind of plagued him, including dying by Joker's hand. Now, I'm going to check on some other list of things I need to talk about, and then we're going to get to them, and it's going to be really fun. So, give me one moment, please, helpful audience. This novel series itself is a graphic compilation. It is published by DC Comics. It is 175 pages. As I said, the story is the story of Jason Todd. The goal is basically the physical goal is to take on Joker. The metaphysical goal is kind of to move on from that entire part of his life, which he is trying to do. And as I've said, the conflict in Act 2 does not really support that goal. I mean, it supports the physical goal, but not so much the mental goal, as it's mostly from the perspective of Bruce Wayne, Batman. It does have a clear story arc. It has a beginning, middle, and end, and there is a definite resolution, and it's very satisfying because it's something that's been basically kind of been put up in the air basically since Red Hood revealed himself and kind of was like flipped off Bruce Wayne, which is essentially the reunification of father and son, which they finally get at the last page. There's definitely a solid character arc. There is a definite change because Red Hood is finally able to move on with his life. You know, it seems like in this novel, if we're looking at this as a singular novel, it seems like he's finally like forgiven Batman. He seems like he's moving on from the Joker, that horrible event, and he's moving on with his life. So there's going to be some changes, and definitely going to see some changes in Jason Todd in the next couple, in the next volume or two. There are very efficient transitions, panel by panel movements. It really helps create the imagery, especially here and stuff like this. It really easily created imagery, and you can kind of imagine what happens in between the panels and the transitions they hold. And then it uses very good directional flow. Like, really, there's a very good direction. It's very fast-paced and directional. It really keeps the reader in view, as you can see. As I said before, the subliminal motion, I think is the correct term, that creates it. You can kind of imagine what happens in between the panels, the motions that happen in between the frozen points in time, and it creates really nice motion. And now moving on, I would definitely recommend this to basically anyone. It's a fun story. I love Jason Todd. He's really cool. He's a flawed character. He's a good character. It's all basically the story of three flawed characters trying to move on from hard parts in their lives, and basically the character growth of those characters throughout them. And I would definitely suggest this to anyone, even people who don't like DC, because it's very fun. And it's actually one of the first comic series I really actually read, because I love Red Hood. I think I did the fun fact about the relationship between Corey and Red Arrow. Other fun facts, the person the Joker hates the most is Nightwing, which is probably why he wants to kill all of the sidekicks, because he really doesn't like sidekicks, even though he kind of has them with Harley Quinn. But anyway, this is my video. Have fun, like, subscribe. Actually, don't. I don't know why I just said that. Everyone have a good evening. Cool, and I am signing off.